Okay, for today, let's switch gears a little bit. No presentation today. So basic understanding about the functional groups in organic chemistry. So we looked into a small aspect of organic chemistry called chirality in the last lecture. We were trying to understand what does chiral mean. So it's like the handedness and stuff like that. The next step in Charles' book is to understand the different biomolecules like proteins, carbohydrates, DNA, stuff like that, lipids. But I thought before that, because many of you have not had organic chemistry before, so before jumping into this big blob, like big chunks of molecules, let's try to dedicate just one class in understanding the different functional groups when we talk about functional groups in organic chemistry. So a little bit of board work. Okay. So okay, so in organic chemistry, what are we talking about? Carbon compounds, right? We are talking about carbon compounds, except the carbonate, bicarbonate, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide. So all other carbon compounds. And you will see that this carbon has 4 bonds, always has 4 bonds, right? And these 4 bonds can either be satisfied by 4 single sigma bonds. So one case is all single bonds. And these single bonds are called sigma bonds. Because when one carbon comes and attaches to other carbon, what happens is, so this carbon, you can imagine, so the first thing is, what is the electronic configuration of carbon? 1s2, 2s2, 2p, 2? Make sense? In here, you will see that the outermost has 4. And that's why carbon is in the 14th group, so 2, 4, that's also there, right? So these carbons that you will see in organic chemistry can have 4 types of bonds. Sorry, 3 types of hybridization. So it could have an sp3 hybridization, it could have an sp2 hybridization, and it can have an sp hybridization. Okay, so when you have these kinds of hybridization, their structures are different. So what is the, I don't want to say proposed structure, but what is, if all these 4 bonds, if all the 4 places have bonds in them, you get a type of a structure in sp3. So what is that structure in sp3? Tetrahedral, right? Now things become a little bit different when you have a tetrahedral shape, but you have 4 positions, but out of those 4 positions, only 3 of them are being occupied by bond pairs, and 1 of the places are occupied by a lone pair. For example, CH4 has an sp3 hybridization, NH3 ammonia has an sp3 hybridization, and water has sp3 hybridization. And what it means is, in here the central atom, the carbon, this is the central atom is here, and then you will have these H, 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 and H. So in this case, the hybridization is 4. There are 4 electron pairs, And all those 4 electron pairs have bonds in them. So remember like how we were talking about the central atom, and then there would be 2 dogs, and we would be trying to separate these 2 dogs. In this case, how many dogs are there? 4 dogs, right? So we have 4 positions, and your job is to separate these 4 dogs out. The way to do it is the tetrahedral shape. So you have 4 locations, okay? Now, there are 2 types of dogs, domesticated and wild. 2 types of bonds, what are they? Not, sorry, my mistake. 2 types of electron pairs. What are the electron pairs? 2 types of electron pairs. There are bond pairs. Those electron pairs that are involved in a bond, for example in here, so these are bond pairs. But you could also have a lone pair. For example, in ammonia, just removing this sp2 to avoid confusion at the moment. So in ammonia, the hybridization is still sp3, but there are 3 bond pairs and 1 lone pair. So the structure in here becomes something like this, in which on 3 locations you have bond pairs, bond pair 1, bond pair 2, bond pair 3. On one of the locations you have a lone pair, and this structure, the proposed structure, was tetrahedral, but the actual structure of this is not tetrahedral, because the lone pairs, you cannot see the lone pairs, they're electrons. So what is this structure? Pyramidal. So you have to imagine the tetrahedral structure is a little difficult to imagine. How do you imagine a tetrahedral structure? Have you seen the pyramids of Egypt? At least in a picture or in a movie. So if you are looking from the top of that pyramid, what do you see the cross section? What is the cross section that you see if you're staring down on Giza's pyramid? What is the cross section? It's a square. So imagine there is a square and then there is this apex on the top. Okay, so that's called a square pyramid structure. That's a square pyramid. Now imagine, not exactly accurate, but imagine that there is a trigonal pyramid. So if you are looking from the top, the cross section that you see is a triangle, right? And this is the apex of that pyramid. That's the pointed top. And then you are standing on top with a stick. That is a tetrahedral structure. So a trigonal pyramid with someone sitting on the top with a stick on it. So that entire structure, when you see that, that is a tetrahedral structure. In here, it becomes easy to see that you cannot see this. So there is no stick on the top. So what does this structure become? So just pyramidal. Because you can just see the pyramid. You are not able to see someone with a stick on the top. So you're just seeing the pyramid. Similarly for water, in this case, this is also sp3, but there are 2 bond pairs and 2 lone pairs. So what is the structure of this? What is the structure for water? Do this. I mean, you have oxygen and then you have 4 places to fill. 2 of them will be filled by lone pairs and 2 of them will be filled by bond pairs, and all of them are equivalent. There is no special consideration. So you can fill 2 lone pairs and 2 bond pairs anywhere, and then tell me the shape that you see for the water molecule. Do it and then tell me. Draw the water molecule. So start here. So start with the central atom. Then you have one here, 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 and here. Place 2 of the hydrogens anywhere you want, and then place 2 of the lone pairs in the remaining 2 places. So what is that shape?
Is this just the...
Right, that is the shape. What is that shape? What would you call it? What would you call it? What would you call this shape?
It looks like a pyramid.
Can you give a simple name to this pyramid? Because you are actually not able to see the pyramid. You can see that oxygen with these 2 things.
I don't remember the name of it.
No, very simplistically. Give the simplest name that you can. No pyramid, no nothing. Give it the simplest name. Imagine that you are teaching 3rd graders. What is that shape? Bent. That's it. It's a bent shape. Or a V shape, whatever. Right? So same hybridization can give you different shapes. So that was the idea. Now you will see that all these become important in astrobiology. And that is what I repeatedly see in astrobiology. So like all these important molecules in astrobiology, in life, all of them or many of them have an sp3 hybridization. Okay, so in sp3 carbon you have all these if a carbon is sp3 hybridized, then you have a tetrahedral angle geometry going around that carbon. Now different carbons can have different hybridization and different geometries, and we'll see that. But what I also want you to understand is what is a sigma bond. So there are 2 types of bonds, sigma bond and pi bond. What happens in sigma bond is like, imagine you have a hydrogen atom in which you have, it doesn't work in hydrogen because imagine that you have this carbon, methane, or carbon thing going on, okay? Just imagine that. In here, this carbon is bonding with an sp3 orbital. What is an sp3 orbital? An sp3 hybridized orbital is made up of 1s and 3 p orbitals. What is the shape of an s orbital? Spherical. What is the shape of a p orbital? Dumbbell. When you combine them, you form something like this. What is the percent character of S in this? How much percent is S versus how much percent is P? What is the percent? If you have 1S and 3P, what is the percentage? Simple math, come on. 25%. So it is 25% S and 75% P. So most of its character is a P character. Okay? So this is the hybridized orbital. When carbon is coming with an sp3 hybridization, all its orbitals have kind of morphed into this sp3 orbital. So how many orbitals were actually involved in this sp3? How many orbitals? In number, 1s and 3p. So total 4 orbitals were involved. How many sp3 orbitals will you get? 4. You got 4 orbitals to start with. So total number of orbitals were how much? 4. So you get 4 sp3 orbitals in the end when they kind of hybridize. Okay? So all the carbon orbitals that are involved in this bonding, all are this sp3 hybridization. Okay? In here, when it will make a bond, now the simplest idea is if you have, say, a P, let's go back to very simplistically and then we'll go to the sp3. If you have a p orbital from one atom and you have a p orbital from some other atom, what is bonding? The bonding is the interaction of these two orbitals, right? So they will come together and they will interact. What happens is these two will come together and they will overlap. This is the bond. So imagine these are balloons and you're pinching in the middle. So the shape that it actually forms, that's the dumbbell shape. You're taking two of those balloons, bringing it together, and that overlap, that direct overlap that you get, these two things merging together, that's the bond. Is this a head-on overlap or not? Is this head-on or not? This is a head-on overlap. So like one orbiter is coming this way, the other is coming this way, and it is, so it's a head-on. So it's like a direct overlap. This direct overlap is called a sigma bond. However, when we are talking about a direct overlap, that kind of hints at an indirect overlap of orbitals as well. So the p orbitals, how many types of p orbitals are there? What is the magnetic quantum number of p? What is the azimuthal quantum number of p? 1. Right? So the azimuthal quantum number L for s orbital was 0, for p it is 1, and therefore it can go from 0 to +1 and -1. So there are 3 types of p orbitals: px, py, and pz. So the azimuthal quantum numbers is giving a hint at how many orientations that p orbital can be present. So the magnetic quantum numbers. So if you have a p orbital, that p orbital can be 3 types: px, py, and pz. Okay, in 3 orientations. So you can have a px, you can also have a py, you can also have a pz. So I'm just okay. So 3 types of orbitals. Now, if the direct overlap is the head-on overlap is allowed, that becomes a sigma bond. But sometimes what might happen is you will not get, so 2 atoms have come close, there is a sigma bond, but there is probably another orbital, which is this, which has come close, but they are not able to head-on interact. But because they are close, there is an interaction that is going on between these two. Right? Because if they are together, but a little bit far from that, there will be an interaction. But will the interaction be as strong as the sigma or less than that? It will be less than that. So that interaction is called a pi interaction. And this interaction is called a pi interaction. So sigma interaction and pi interaction. Now this pi interaction is what like the double bond is a kind of sigma and pi. So when a carbon is making a double bond, what it is actually doing is making one sigma bond and one pi bond. In sp3, do you have a double bond? In sp3 hybridized carbon, do you have a double bond, or all the bonds are single? All are single. So if you have a single bond, what do you think will happen? Will you have only a sigma bond or only a pi bond, or anything can happen when you just have one bond to make? So I am carbon, there's another carbon or hydrogen or whoever, and I want to make one bond with that guy. I mean guy, gender neutral, that person. What kind of a bond will I make? Will it be direct or from the? It will be direct. So if I'm making one bond, that will be sigma bond. Now, the next bond, if there is an orbital available if I have an orbital available and in that person has an orbiter available and we can bond, but we are not able to come too close to make a direct overlap, I will be interacting with that orbital, but not directly. So I will make a what bond? A pi bond. So when there is carbon in the sp3 hybridized, so for example CH4, in which all the bonds are sigma, all the bonds are single, so all these bonds are sigma bonds. But when you have a double bond, for example here, there are two bonds. So there is one sigma and one pi bond in here. Okay, so there is one direct overlap and then one interaction. Because you can only, so if there are two carbons coming together, there is only one axis on which you can actually overlap, because that's the p. It's not like an s orbital in which you can come in from everywhere. You cannot. Because when carbon is making a bond with this hydrogen, what is happening is, if you have this orbital, this is the sp3 hybridized orbital of carbon. But there is no hybridization here. This is plain s orbital of hydrogen. So it doesn't matter the orientation in here. It will. But if you are coming with another carbon, so there has to be a bonding on the same axis, and then there is interaction. Because once you are done bonding on that axis, you are just fixed. That seals the deal there. It will not allow you to just move again and make that pi. No, it's not allowed. So this is the sp2. What shape is this? In sp2, you have three dogs. What shape is this? Trigonal planar. And the angles? 120 degrees. So in tetrahedral is 109 degrees 28 minutes. In a perfect tetrahedron, in a perfect trigonal planar, you will get 120 degrees, 120 degree angle. Make sense? What is the percentage S character in sp2? 33%. Right? sp2, 3 orbitals, 1 out of 3 is S. So the percentage S character in sp2 is 33%. Similar to this, when you have a triple bond, this is an sp hybridized. So percent S character is how much? 50%. Also, the shape is linear. This is 180 degrees. It is linear. How many sigma bonds? Here, 1. And pi? 2 pi bonds. So this is it. I mean, you cannot have any other hybridization in carbon. That's it. That's the end of it. Water is important because you will see a lot of OH bearing things coming in, and it's important to know that oxygen in water is also sp3 hybridized. Ammonia will also play a part. And it's important to know that ammonia, that N is also sp3 hybridized. So it's all just these 3 hybridizations that we typically need to worry about when we are talking about organic chemistry. Okay. Now, it is not very important in here for our discussions of the structures, but typically I would like to know the electronegativity of sp versus sp2 versus sp3. carbon. So which is more electronegative? Because you saw the electronegativity trend in the periodic table. What happens to electronegativity? It increases and decreases. So as you are moving from left to right, it is increasing and it is decreasing from top to bottom. It is related to the size. What happens to the size from left to right? It becomes smaller. Right? Since it is becoming smaller, it is getting closer to the nucleus. And that is how you can think about electronegativity. Keeping that thing in mind, that the size, when size drops, electronegativity increases. Tell me the electronegativity trend of sp, sp2 and sp3. Which do you think is the closest to the nucleus? Or has a character which is closest to the nucleus? To understand that, you just think about whether S is more closer to the nucleus or P is more closer to the nucleus. S is more closer to the nucleus. So as the S character increases, electronegativity will increase. So this is the electronegativity trend. This becomes important to understand the acidic behavior in organic compounds. This is one of the examples. Because we saw, and this is related to acidic H. So, previously I might have mentioned an acidic H, how I would like to, for example, this is a compound, it's called acetic acid. There are two types of hydrogens in here. One hydrogen is this, the other hydrogen is this. My question is, which of them has an acidic nature? The one with the carbon or one with the hydrogen? One with the oxygen. Why?
Because oxygen has more electronegativity.
So what?
So it can, in the bond, it can attract the electron and hydrogen will be more, it can lose, like it can go from the molecule.
There is another way of looking at it. So in order to understand whether this will be released or this will be released. So if this is acidic H, if I release the hydrogen in the A position, what will be the compound? What will be the product? CH3, C double bond O, O minus. If that H goes away, that is the product. Versus if this is the hydrogen, the B, that is removed. So you are removing the hydrogen, but the B hydrogen, then the compound becomes, what will be the charge on this carbon? What will be the charge on this carbon if I remove a hydrogen plus? Are you sure? What is confusing you? So when HCl breaks, what are the products? So tell me what had H2 or what?
It'd have to be H2, right? Or not?
When a salt breaks, what do you get? When this thing dissociates, what do you get?
Na plus HCl minus.
Yes. So when you dissociate this, what do you get?
H plus HCl minus.
What is this? This is the proton. This is the seat of all acidity.